Is it legal to call their doctors and threaten them because they disagree with you? How does she still have a license to practice medicine with these types of behaviors?
I immediately broke down, started crying. She looked at me and walked away.
I was terrified the whole time and was not allowed to have a familiar person with me when any of these doctors kept coming into my room to interrogate me over and over again.
It's unimaginable to be wrongfully accused of child abuse. For all of us, a lot of the damage is already done. I ask the commissioners to please assure Dr. Jensen is removed from her position of ridiculous power.
Without ever meeting me, Dr. Jensen, along with CYS, managed to turn my entire life upside down by forcibly removing me from my parents and throwing me into kinship care.
Everything that she falsely accused us of, she actually did herself. Manipulated doctors, lied about what they said, and forced unnecessary procedures on a child, including surgery. Dr. Jensen is a predator.
We will never look at the word doctor the same way again.
I'm here to discuss what I hope we can agree is a bipartisan issue. My name is Mark Pinsley. I'm the controller of Lehigh County. My duty is to be the watchdog of public funds and ensure the county uses taxpayer money appropriately and efficiently. This morning, I released a copy of my report titled The Cost of Misdiagnosis. Recently, my office uncovered statistics that may impact the county's finances. I became aware of a rare disease called Munchausen Syndrome by Proxy. This is a disease where a caregiver convinces a child they are sick, often seeking unnecessary medical treatment and intervention. Munchausen syndrome is considered medical child abuse, and so children and youth services, whom Lehigh County provides more than a $30 million budget for, is involved in cases with this disease. The Controller's Office found that while the northeast region of Pennsylvania, which includes Lehigh County, has only 11% of the children in the state, it has 40% of the cases of Munchausen syndrome by proxy. 33% of the state's Munchausen syndrome by proxy is located in Lehigh and Northampton counties alone. Scott Bailey, PhD, the chair and professor of psychology at Texas Lutheran University, stated, given the seriousness of child abuse and the rarity of Munchausen syndrome by proxy, close examination into what is driving the high numbers of diagnosis in the Northeast region appears not only merited, but urgent. A misdiagnosis of the syndrome, or really any misdiagnosis that causes us to remove a child, may lead to considerable costs to the county, including foster care, kinship care, caseworker costs, to name just a few, as well as potential legal liabilities. Lehigh County spends more than $8 million on foster care and kinship care, and another $2 million on counseling. This is money well spent when it is directed towards the parents and children in need, but money is wasted when there is a misdiagnosis. Misdiagnosis also has consequences on innocent families, as falsely accused parents are deemed child abusers. Part of the state process, which the county follows, requires caseworkers within 60 days to decide the status of the case. They label the case as unfounded, meaning they do not suspect child abuse, or indicated, meaning they have substantial evidence of child abuse. This evidence may be based on diagnosis of a doctor. Without a judge or jury, these caregivers are labeled as child abusers in the eyes of Pennsylvania. They will receive a letter from the state that says, Human Services made a determination that you committed child abuse. Human Services made that determination, not a judge. This person is put on Pennsylvania Child Abuse Registry. They may lose their jobs or be unable to find employment. Few actions demonstrate government overreach more clearly than the county separating children from their parents without proper justification. As some have suggested, I will be sending this report to the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services and the Auditor General. However, there are things the county can and should do. My principal recommendations are as follows. Lehigh County should require a second opinion concerning the diagnosis of medical child abuse when considering removing a child from their families. This second opinion should meet the following criteria. It should be from a medical professional affiliated with a different hospital network than the one involved in the initial diagnosis. The individual providing the second opinion must have expertise in the specific specialty that is relevant to the case in question. Remember, Munchausen is where the mother already has a diagnosis from a doctor. So it's one doctor versus another doctor, and we are just choosing our doctor while the parents are choosing their doctor. A second specialized opinion seems warranted. The county should hire an independent investigator to provide an unbiased review of the processes before and after a caregiver is indicated. The selection of the investigator should be done in collaboration with SEIU, the union caseworkers are members of, to ensure that employees feel involved, fairly treated, and protected from undue blame. The county should request that the hospital also conducts independent review of the medical child abuse cases over the past 5 years. As a watchdog of Lehigh County finances, I urge the county to take these recommendations seriously. Lehigh County can and must do better, focusing on financial responsibility while ensuring that our community's parents and children receive the support they need. I also suggest that others who believe they have been impacted reach out to Parents Medical Rights Group, the Greater Lehigh Valley chapter. Their website is pmrglv.com. The Parents Medical Rights Group Lehigh Valley. Thank you, and I ask that this be entered as it stands into the minutes. Thank you.
If you have remarks that you want inserted verbatim, you can pass them along to the clerk.
Please.
I will.
Great job on that. Next, please.
I can't sell what I reside in Lehigh County. I never thought this could happen to us. We were just like you and the other families in Lehigh Valley. We took our oldest child to the emergency room at Lehigh Valley Hospital for help. We were immediately banned from the hospital and accused over a weekend of suffering from a psychological disorder by doctors who never met us. To this day, we have never had contact with our son again. Without ever meeting or speaking to us, Jensen and her team at Lehigh Valley Hospital diagnosed my husband and I with Munchausen by Proxy. Although both my husband and I have 30-page evaluations determining that we do not meet any of the criteria, Children and Youth put us through a year-long soul-crushing legal proceeding before finally withdrawing its case entirely. And behind it all was Lehigh Valley Hospital and Debra Jensen pulling the strings, orchestrating the proceedings, intentionally destroying our family for no reason at all. My husband had 18 years and I grew up in Lehigh County. We raised our family and we work in Lehigh County. Early in our children's lives, we learned that they were medically complex. They were diagnosed and treated by prestigious specialists renowned in their expertise and training. Despite these challenges, we built a life where our children were successful contributors to the same community where we grew up. Both boys thrived. That is, until Debra Jensen got involved. Being a mother is the single most important thing that has happened to me. Our home revolved around our kids and their interests. We watched proudly as they progressed through martial arts belts, performed in vocal competitions, and excelled academically. My husband coached their soccer teams and built the sets for their theater productions, while I was backstage chaperoning. All of this ended the day that Debra Esernio-Jenssen and her Lehigh Valley team entered our life. Not one person involved in the process was interested in the truth. Not the caseworkers, supervisors, administrators, or solicitors. We were pawns in a game. Expert physicians, multiple psychologists, teachers, and school staff, over 15 witnesses tried to get a hold of CYS to dispute Jensen's allegations, but none of it mattered. What we learned through former CYS staff is, quote, Jensen gets what Jensen wants. There is no investigation. Our caseworker, who shares an office with Jensen at the hospital, seemed to enjoy torturing our family. At court one day, when our son had to leave with a foster parent and not his family, our caseworker pushed open the court doors, walked into the hallway, threw her hands up into the air, and celebrated to the foster mother, "Congratulations, it's a boy." Throughout this ordeal, we tried contacting the director of CYS, voicemails, emails, letters. We never received a response back from her. Paula Roberts, I really wish you would call me back. I want the county to require a second opinion from a qualified specialist in medical cases, specialist in the condition, not a child abuse pediatrician. Specialists must be outside the LVHN network. Case closure should be trained, but a medical disagreement should never be the basis to remove a child from their home. And I respectfully ask the board to protect our community and vote yes on the controller's recommendation. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Pinsley with a statement would like that into the record when it does speak.
Yeah, that's a standing invitation for anybody in the staff. Again, first, last name, municipality.
Stephen Seltz, Royal Mass. In my opinion, if you are taking your child to Lehigh Valley Hospital, you are putting your child and family in danger. A trip to Lehigh Valley Health Network for help may result in losing custody of your child, exposure to harmful tests, attorney fees, incarceration, job loss, and being registered as a child abuser. Any of this can happen to innocent, good families, as it did to mine. Once Debra Jenssen, the puppet master of LVHN Child Protection Team, accuses you of abuse, she weaponizes the county CYS systems to ruthlessly destroy the family based solely on her opinions without any evidence. I took my son to Lehigh Valley ER for medical treatment, and in less than 12 hours and for 7 days, without our permission or legal proceeding, my wife and I were banned from entering the hospital or communicating with our son. Under oath, a Lehigh Valley Health Network doctor confirmed the hospital's routine removal of parental rights without a legal proceeding. This is illegal under Pennsylvania law. Within 30 hours of taking our son to the hospital, and without ever meeting my wife or I, Debra Jenssen and the Child Protection Team labeled both my wife and me having Munchausen by Proxy syndrome. This is a 1 in 10 billion chance for both of us to have it. Concluded that our son should be removed from our care, remove my son from all medical treatments without his long-term treating physician's knowledge, and that our second son should be removed from our custody also. Our son's long-term treating physicians, including a renowned metabolic geneticist, a Columbia-trained pediatric neurologist, and other medical professionals, were emailing and calling into the hospital to provide medical input and to dispute Debra Jenssen's accusations. Debra Jenssen ignored them all, except for one. She made a phone call to the Cleveland Clinic to attack the renowned geneticist. She spewed insults at him and told him that he was practicing dangerous medicine. Debra Jenssen, in her improper relationship with Lehigh County CYS, uses unfettered access to obtain emergency custody with single phone calls that go against her opinion. Any facts that go against her opinion are omitted. When she was done destroying our oldest son's medical care and destroying his trust in his parents, she turned her attention to our youngest son and did the exact same thing to him. We lost both of our sons. During this nightmare, we learned that local attorneys, government officials, caseworkers, hospital employees, and even CYS solicitors refused to take their own children to Lehigh Valley Hospital because they know the danger of Debra Jenssen at Lehigh Valley Health Network. We learned that the Allentown Police Department has nicknamed her Dr. Death. We were asked in media interviews what we would say to Dr. Jenssen, and here is my answer. Debra Jenssen, I would like to formally introduce myself and my wife to you. Thank you for noticing all the hard work that went into raising our children when you yelled they were normal to the Cleveland Clinic doctor. Our life was exactly that before you destroyed it without ever meeting us. I want Lehigh Valley Hospital to commence an immediate review of its practices surrounding the false allegations of child abuse, and I want Debra Jenssen fired so we can feel safe again taking our children.
My name is Karen Radogna. I reside in Lower Nazareth Township, and I too have been a victim of Dr. Jenssen. I have friends here in this room who have lost custody of their children because of Lehigh Valley Hospital and Dr. Jenssen. In March of last year, my friends took their almost 4-month-old son to the children's emergency room at Lehigh Valley Hospital with a broken arm, where they unfortunately encountered Dr. Jenssen. My friend explained to Dr. Jenssen that while she did not witness the incident, she believed the baby's arm was accidentally broken by his 4-year-old brother while he was helping him roll over. something that the 4-year-old had watched his parents do on many occasions. Dr. Jensen aggressively cornered the already distraught mother of this child in a room alone, pointed her finger in her face, and asked intrusive questions like, do you own your home or do you rent? Do you live off the system? What kind of car do you drive? What does your husband do for a living? All questions that are completely irrelevant to addressing the issue that brought them to the emergency room that night. Within 24 hours of this ER visit, CYS came to my friend's home and removed both of their boys, placing them in foster care. Excuse me. My husband and I immediately contacted CYS to offer ourselves as a kinship placement. And we made it clear to CYS that we would gladly keep the boys as long as necessary for this issue to be resolved. A week later, my husband and I took the baby for a follow-up visit with Dr. Jensen, and she ordered another set of full-body x-rays. As a registered nurse of 26 years with a background in intensive care, I questioned the need for these x-rays, as he was 14 pounds and had had 32 x-rays. As a result of questioning Dr. Jensen, the boys were removed from our home and put back into foster care. Fast forward to today, it's been 18 months since the boys were removed from my friends because of nothing but the allegations of Dr. Jensen. There has been no investigation by CYS, not one interview. They have not spoken with one family member. They have not spoken with one friend. They have done nothing to determine whether or not abuse actually occurred, nor have they considered the possibility that they made a terrible mistake and removed 2 boys from an innocent family. CYS has relied solely on the opinion of Dr. Jensen in making the decision to remove 2 young children from their loving home, disrupting the parent-child bond and devastating, absolutely devastating, the emotional well-being of this innocent family. To date, my friends have spent $100,000, yes, you heard that right, $100,000 on attorney fees, expert fees, and evaluations, and they've been living without their children for 18 months. Dr. Jensen took away a baby, and now he is a toddler. They've been living without their children for 18 months and have missed out on holidays, birthdays, vacations, and all family events. What this doctor and CYS has taken away from this family can never be replaced. What they have taken from these people can never be replaced, and it is up to you people to do something about it and to stop this abusive system.
My name is Alexander Ward, and I'm a Lehigh County resident, and I'm here to talk about what happened to me. I had become a new father at the age of 45 in October of 2021, and in January of 2022, I found myself taking care of our daughter because my wife was getting her hair cut. So our child was 3 months old at that point in time. I was a brand new father, and I was thrilled to have this opportunity at that age. And I was with my daughter, we were upstairs, we were playing after work, and I was bonding with her, I was trying to connect with her, and just be a good father, be there for her. It turned about 8 o'clock at night, and I brought my daughter downstairs, and I was gonna cook my wife dinner because I expected her back around 8:30. My dog, who's the love of my life, comes running down the stairs on my left, and I shifted my body to get out of the way, and I was wearing socks, and I slipped on the stairs, and I dropped my daughter on the hard wooden stairs. And she hit with a loud thud, and she started crying hysterically. I was horrified at what had happened. I felt terrible about the whole thing. It was my responsibility to take care of my daughter, and I had dropped her, and I couldn't believe it. I immediately called my wife, and she got back in touch with me, and we immediately decided to take our daughter over to Lehigh Valley Hospital for emergency care treatment. Now, my wife had given birth there 3 months before, and our experience had been great. Everyone there was great. We felt very well taken care of. I had no concerns about bringing my daughter to the Lehigh Valley Health. I also knew that they were going to be looking at me. This is the classic story that, dad is alone with the child falls on the stairs, and that's what you tell him, right? I'm also happen to be a criminal defense attorney, and I represent people that are accused of this stuff. I knew exactly what was going to happen. I was okay with it, frankly. I expected it. I expected them to ask me questions. I expected to be under the microscope a little bit. I was okay with that. I was prepared to answer all questions that they may have had. We showed up there. Our daughter got the treatment she needed. Everybody there was great. Friendly, supportive. I told my story. Must have told it 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 times. Must have told me that night. Our daughter was given an MRI, and it turned out she had blood hemorrhaging from the brain, bilateral hemorrhaging, and she was admitted into the PICU that night. I went home. My wife stayed at the PICU, and I went to work the next day. When I came home, my wife called me and said that Children News was stopping by, and I had to sign the emergency action plan that they were going to take our daughter away from us. I couldn't believe that. I expected Children News to contact me, but I didn't expect it to progress that quickly. I didn't know what to do, so I signed it. And my wife came home the next day, and we just tried to put this whole thing behind us, but we were just hysterical about the whole thing. And then I got a call that the police wanted to speak with me, and also the caseworker wanted to come out and talk to us. Well, now I'm starting to panic, because I'm an attorney, and if I get accused with a crime, I might lose my law license, I might lose my job, I might lose my paper, all for something that I didn't do. And I felt horrible about it in the first place. So what I did was I got myself a good lawyer, Gavin Hollahan, who's actually going to become the Lehigh County DA, and I let him guide me through this process. Gavin knows about all this stuff. He's been through it before, and he told me to do exactly what I tell you, and I'm going to get you through this. That's what I did. I followed exactly what he told me. I took a polygraph exam, passed it, talked to the police. People have said it here before, they know about this doctor. And they sort of took everything she said with a grain of salt. The caseworker came by multiple times, asking me offensive questions, asking my wife offensive questions. Did we want our daughter? I happen to be in recovery. Did I start drinking again? Did I have an anger problem? Did I abuse my wife? While my wife was at the hospital, she was cornered by Dr. Jensen and asked a series of very, very intrusive questions and strongly implied that I was the person that abused my daughter. I'm very fortunate that my wife never doubted me for a second. My wife's family never doubted me. My family never doubted me for a second. But the possibility that they were going to view me as someone who was deliberately abused my child was very, very hard for me to accept. Now, I know I only have a few minutes or a few seconds left here, but I want to tell you, you want to talk about the cost? I had to hire an attorney. I had to pay a polygraph fee. I had to go through the emotional cost of this whole thing. And, I will say my faith in the system is shaken by this, and I won't take my daughter back to Lehigh Valley either.
All right, we'll see if we have any more after this next speaker. You may proceed.
My name is Eileen Payne. I live in Allentown, Pennsylvania. I'm reading a statement on behalf of a 14-year-old young man who's been affected by the things discussed tonight. The statement reads as follows. I wish I could read this statement myself tonight, but I spent a year standing alone in front of adults trying to have my voice heard. To stand in front of you tonight, again, trying to be heard, reminds me too much of the trauma I recently experienced. I was kidnapped and medically abused by Lehigh Valley Hospital and CYS. What has happened to me has changed my life forever. It destroyed my mental health and my sense of safety. Without ever meeting me, Dr. Jensen, along with CYS, managed to turn my entire life upside down by forcibly removing me from my parents and throwing me into kinship care. I was 13 years old when this happened. A day after being ripped from my parents, Lehigh Valley Hospital medically kidnapped me, placed me in their hospital, isolated and manipulated me for 5 days. My parents were allowed to visit for 30 minutes per day. A security guard escorted them into my room, set a timer for 30 minutes while he stared at us. I didn't understand what was happening because my parents weren't asking me how I was doing and would not tell me what was going on. But I later learned that there were now rules, and they were not allowed to. There were rules on how I could interact with my parents. So we played Uno, Connect Four, and Group. I asked the hospital doctors for my regular doctors. They refused. In those 5 days, they tried to manipulate me into thinking that everything my parents told me was a lie. They told me my medical conditions weren't real, and they were stopping my medicine. I told them what happens when I am not taking the medicine and begged them not to rip me off the medicine that helps me. I was treated like a guinea pig and a lab rat. I was terrified the whole time and was not allowed to have a familiar person with me when any of these doctors kept coming into my room to interrogate me over and over again. I told them my medical symptoms were real, and without medicine, I would get worse. So they finally decided I was making up my medical symptoms and diagnosed me Munchausen Syndrome imposed on myself. When I became a ward of the state, I was assigned a guardian ad litem. He was supposed to be my voice because my parents were now gone and not allowed to help me. He did not visit me in the hospital. He never visited me in kinship care or my home. He never talked to my parents, teachers, my doctors, or therapists. He talked to me twice at the courthouse, 5 minutes before court. He knew nothing about me, but he was going to tell the judge what was best for me. I wanted my voice heard, so while away from my parents, I finally wrote a letter to the judge. I texted the letter to my guardian ad litem asking him to give it to the judge at the next court date. It never made it to the judge. So the next time I was in court, I tried to hand my letter directly to the judge. When I walked up to the judge, they refused to let me hand it to her. The adults started arguing. I was treated like a terrorist trying to approach a judge. It turned out that the judge isn't allowed to read my letter. Apparently my voice has to be admitted as an exhibit. There were so many rules. I was isolated from family and friends. I became emotionally numb and developed depression. I worried about my parents and what was happening to them. Off my medication, I became terribly sick, was in immense pain, and could not eat or drink. It took months for me to get better after they experimented on me. Whenever CYS visited, I felt like in fight or flight because they had all the power to destroy my life again. I was afraid to leave my house. I felt like CYS could show up anytime and take me again. The mental damage is ongoing. Anytime someone knocks on the door, I'm forced to relive my trauma and fear that CYS is behind that door. I had a normal life before any of this happened. I will never be the same after what has happened to me.
Hi, I'm Ryan Whitaker. I reside in South Whitehall Township. Our child, Scott, who is a teenager now, seemingly had no immune system as a baby and for the first 8 or 9 years of his life. He required extra time and care to recover from simple viral illnesses that his twins seemed to bounce back from with very little issues. Time after time of requiring that extra help, he was finally diagnosed with a mitochondrial disorder by 2 neurologists, one of them a mitochondrial specialist at St. Christopher's Pediatric Hospital in Philadelphia 10 years ago, after being sent to them by a Lehigh Valley Hospital doctor. His care continued to be provided by Lehigh Valley Hospital and his pediatrician since birth, while being overseen by the mitospecialist from St. Christopher's. Lehigh Valley Hospital doctors recommended interventions to improve and maintain his health, decisions that we weighed strongly and made sure were in his best interests, and we know that they were. Fast forward to 2020, when in his only hospitalization in a 1-year time period, Lehigh Valley Hospital made a significant medical error in our child's care. We were of course upset, as it took weeks for him being able to move his left arm again. Not long after that encounter, and a week before Thanksgiving, children and youth showed up at our door stating that they had a court order to take our son into their custody. Our son was taken to the hospital, had surgery performed on him without our consent and against the protocols set forth by his specialist. Our 11-year-old autistic son did not see a family member for over a week and spent his favorite holiday in a hospital room while Dr. Jensen brought him toys and tried to convince him that his parents were terrible people, toys that he threw away. We lost custody of our son for 4 months with no investigation, just what Dr. Jensen said. A woman who had never met us or our son simply decided that he fit her criteria. Upon looking through the medical records, we found out that his hospital stay during their medical error was denied by insurance. It was appealed, denied again, appealed again, and denied. Everything that she falsely accused us of, she actually did herself. manipulated doctors, lied about what they said, and forced unnecessary procedures on a child, including surgery. Dr. Jensen is a predator. She is seemingly even being empowered to be one. She is a threat to this community and all surrounding communities as well. I believe that anybody in this room's family, including those who sit on this committee, could and would be affected by her unethical and immoral behavior if she saw fit to it. We urge the committee to act on this, please.
My name is Kimberly Whitaker. I reside in South Lehigh Township. I'd like to tell you about my son, Scott. He truly is the sweetest kid. He never has a bad word for anyone. He's extremely intelligent. He memorizes amazing amounts of knowledge from killer whale statistics to roller coaster daddy, and he's currently researching the topography of the United States. He has a dry but hilarious sense of humor. I can honestly say everyone that spends time with him loves him. He never has an angry or resentful word, which he deserves to be resentful. There is a difference in the boy that he was before he was medically kidnapped and the boy he is today. He is traumatized. He is anxious when the doorbell rings. If he hears any mention of Lehigh Valley Hospital, of Dr. Jensen, of lawyers, or even if anyone he doesn't know is coming to the house, he hides. He has trouble sleeping for many nights after he thinks he heard any connection to what happened to him. His twin brother is also traumatized. He lived through the fear that they were coming for him any day. He feared his twin would never come home. Scott strongly avoids discussing anything that happened with him while he was held against his will at Lehigh Valley. When asked about Dr. Jensen, he said she was mean to him and that she yelled at him. It is documented in Lehigh Valley's hospital's nursing notes from his admission that Scott saw his dad arriving outside of his window to visit him. He got very excited and was waiting for his dad to come to the hospital room. But his father and the woman that was supposed to supervise visitation were turned away at Jensen's behest, even though she held a court order for visitation in her hand, and that was presented to hospital staff, security, and doctors. The nursing notes also include a note detailing Scott getting so upset that he was crying and began banging his head into the wall of his room. Doctors had to be called down to assess him for a head injury. But Dr. Jensen made no mention of this in her notes and instead described Scott as happy and smiling during his entire hospitalization. Scott, an 11-year autistic child, was alone for medical tests she ordered, and through the unnecessary surgery they performed on him against his will. For me personally, it's about the shame. It's unimaginable to be wrongfully accused of child abuse. For all of us, a lot of the damage is already done. I ask the commissioners to please assure Dr. Jensen is removed from her position of ridiculous power, and a fair and thorough investigation of her criminal wrongdoing be completed. Please do this for the kids that she hasn't taken yet, and so maybe someday I can tell my children with certainty that they're safe in our home now. Sorry. Thank you.
Supervised visitation rights. This is a heartbreaking travesty of a broken system that is supposed to protect children, not harm them. We still have a lot of sleepless nights. You try to push it to the back of your mind, but the awfulness of what happened is always. I wish every child would be loved and cared for like my grandson always has been, until Dr. Jensen got him.
Good evening. My name is Stacy Feeney, and I live in Northampton County. My medically complex children were kidnapped by Dr. Jensen at Lehigh Valley Hospital, and I was falsely accused of having Munchausen Syndrome by Proxy. a rare mental health disorder, by a pediatrician who is not only unqualified to make such a diagnosis, but she never met me or had any interactions with me. A truancy report was made by my youngest daughter's school due to absences caused by her medical conditions, all of which were explained by her specialist. CYS became involved, and after investigating for a few weeks, I was told that I needed to take my daughter to the Child Advocacy Center at LVHN. I was told it was just a routine check to document my daughter's medical issues and have them on file should truancy become an issue again. That was a lie. Unbeknownst to me, my daughter was being evaluated for Munchausen Syndrome by Proxy. Dr. Jensen decided that all of my daughter's medical issues were false, despite the fact that the diagnoses were made by a world-renowned hospital in Philadelphia. Instead of leaving that appointment with my daughter, I left with paperwork stating that I no longer had custody of my daughter. She belonged to the state of Pennsylvania. Over a month later, I lost custody of my other daughter based on the same false claims. My children were no longer in my care. I had limited chaperoned visitations with them in the CYS building that looked like a prison. I had always promised to protect my children, and they were in a terrifying situation that I could not protect them from. Our specialists at the Philadelphia hospitals wrote letters and made phone calls in support of us, all of which went unanswered. No one checked their full medical records. No one in the hospital or court ever addressed me. They just spoke about me. I was never given a voice to speak until tonight. I had a psychological evaluation done, which proved that I did not have Munchausen Syndrome by Proxy. That wasn't acknowledged in court until months later. After a 9-month battle in court, which tore my family apart physically, mentally, emotionally, and financially, our case was dismissed by the state. It was stated in court, on the record, that there was medical basis for all of my children's illnesses, and that Dr. Jensen's reports were not credible. The ordeal was over, yet the aftermath of the events destroyed our family. Our lives have been forever changed as a result of the experience. We no longer trust the institutions put in place to protect us. We jump when there is a knock at the door, or when a car door slams outside. Our community, especially the schools, still treat us like criminals because CYS never informed them of our innocence, only of our assumed guilt. We were left to pick up the pieces of a mess that should never have occurred. This mess was created by Dr. Jensen's false allegations. The court disproved Dr. Jensen's allegations, yet my children's medical records still say they have Munchausen Syndrome by Proxy. Their medical records need to be restored and the false allegations removed. I am still blocked from obtaining the medical records from the visit to the CAC. It is my right to have access to those records. I respectfully ask that measures be put in place to restore medical records after they have been overwritten with false allegations. Measures need to be put in place to notify all parties involved that families once thought guilty of child abuse are innocent if it is found that abuse did not occur. Dr. Jensen needs to be removed from the child protection team and be prevented from practicing medicine permanently.
My name is Willow Feeney from Northampton County. My younger sister and I were medically kidnapped by Debra Esernio-Jenssen, LVHN. Growing up medically complex is already a challenge in itself. In 2021, my medical care was going amazing, and I was as high as functioning as I've ever been. Then I was suddenly told that everything I felt wasn't valid anymore. I had been taken off every single of my helpful treatments, and I was faced with one of the most traumatic experiences I've ever faced. My story started with a truancy report made by my younger sister. She was seen by Debra Jensen at Lehigh Valley Hospital, who has no specialty experience in any of her conditions, who shortly then accused my parents, who she never met, of fabricating every single diagnosis she had. She was removed from my parents' custody. About over a month later, an unsubstantiated, non-evidential report was made about me. Caseworker came to my home when I was not there with an emergency court order ordering for custody. When I was informed that I was not home, the caseworker called her supervisor and over speakerphone threatened my father with the police to make sure I wasn't there. They left with a promise to be back for me the next day. Due to the paranoia that was caused by CYS in that month, my parents bought an outside camera, which I helped set up and at that time only monitored. I was able to view the camera on my phone and watch all of this happen. I was scared to go home and I was scared to exist. I went home that night with fear and I went to bed knowing what was going to happen to me. I was going to be accused of making up my medical diagnosis I spent so long trying to figure out and treat. I was going to be isolated, ridiculed, discredited of everything, by people who have no idea what they're talking about. My phone was taken away and I had no contact with relatives or my friends. When the doctors there ever asked me if I was sick, every time I would answer yes. My doctors who have positions at multi-million-dollar hospitals that people travel all over the world to see told me I was sick. They gave me the diagnosis, the medications, and the tests. I was reasonable. I tried to give all these people the benefit of the doubt. They knew nothing about me and they didn't know about my complex medical history. I explained, I answered questions, and I gave them resources. They never forgot to commend me on how well-spoken, articulated, and how good of an advocate I was for myself. But no matter how much I explained or information I provided, it was just no. No, I was wrong and I was brainwashed by my mother, but at this point I didn't go to my doctors and could speak to my wits because I spoke for myself. I went back to school. I had attended all my life feeling like a criminal. I had an IEP due to my medical conditions, and when I came back I had a case manager, but I had no IEP accommodations. CYS had gone into my school and told the nurses and staff that my parents were abusers, liars, and criminals, and that I was a liar. Caseworkers had shared pieces of private information, as well as some that had violated HIPAA to the Special Director of Education. I learned this after an interaction with her over speakerphone where she screamed at me, calling me a liar and my mother a criminal. I didn't expect special treatment from them, considering how much of my education overlapped with my medical issues, but when I went back, I felt singled out and alienated. My entire CYS situation was not ideal, but I was shocked, and I had never been treated this way in my entire life than I had by Stockton Valley School District that year. My guardian ad litem, Leonard Mellon, who was supposed to represent my best interests, did not have any interest in helping us. He did not listen to any of the wrongdoings I had expressed to him, nor did he look through any of all of our medical records, which he admitted at our case dismissal. But it was obvious from our phone calls that when he would tell me I didn't have a medical diagnosis in the same sentence, ask me why I didn't do a treatment the doctor had recommended, when I actually had done it at LVHN. And when I said that, he told me not to say contradictory things like that, when the whole basis of our case was medical. I was taken away from my parents, taken off necessary medications. It was all supposed to be for me and my best interests, but no one knew anything about me because no one needed effort to learn about me. They didn't contact or listen to my doctors, and they did not listen to me, the child they're supposed to be helping, and constantly acted against my wishes. The horror that my family had to endure didn't always include LVHN, but everything that happened was a direct result from Debra Jensen and Lehigh Valley Health Network and their accusations. My request, after my sister and I bravely lived through these traumatic events, is that Debra Jensen be removed from LVHN, and that the child protection team be retrained in new methods that have not been tainted by a medically corrupt doctor. Hello, my name is Haley Keeney, and I live in North Hampton County. At the age of 11, I was medically kidnapped by a doctor at LVHN. I was put in the hospital and taken off necessary medications. I was told by the doctor that my mother had a caregiver disorder and there was nothing wrong with me. I knew that wasn't true. She repeatedly asked me who told me I was sick, and I would tell her that it was the doctors and the tests that always said that. And she said, no, who told you you were sick? I knew she was trying to manipulate me into saying what she wanted, but I continued with my original answer. While I was in the hospital, they took away all my resources to the outside world. I couldn't even have the hospital room phone. Every day I would complain about my chronic symptoms and no one listened to me. I wasn't able to talk to my parents or any family members. After six days, I was put into kinship care. During that time, I had supervised hour-long visits once a week. CYS was constantly present in my life. My kinship placement wasn't going well, and when I told my caseworkers, they didn't do anything and left me in the terrible living environment I was in. Being off all my medications, my symptoms had been so much worse. During this time, I couldn't see any of my previous doctors and wasn't getting the help I needed. When I returned to my school district, nurses who knew about my medical issues from the past no longer believed me. When I needed medical assistance, they would give me a mint and let me return to class suffering.
I was told that it was the CYS workers' instructions and that they couldn't do anything to help me. I had accommodations in place to help me succeed, which were not given back to me because CYS went to school. There was nothing wrong with me. All this was caused by the child abuse doctor, the LVHN's false claims. I have so much more I wish I could say, but it has affected me mentally and it's difficult to talk about. Thank you for listening to me.
Mike Rukowski from Hampton. You heard most of our story already from my daughters and my mother. We showed up on July 1st, compliant with everybody wanted us to do. I had been a child care worker for 10 years. I was a mandated observer at one point. And here I found my kids being in the same situation. We brought her into the hospital, and instead of usual morning greetings, we were pretty much rushed by social workers, like Secret Service, and my daughter was rushed off to go meet Dr. Jensen. I stated that she's 11, she should be with her mother, or at least have one of us with her close by. And they said, that's how we do things here. You're gonna have to wait. So about 3 hours went by before I saw my daughter. And she was sitting in a room by herself. They had brought me upstairs, basically trying to get me to sell out my daughter and her mother. They wanted me to sign papers to release her to the hospital, which we had already decided that wasn't gonna happen. And signed papers that her mother was being charged with child abuse. And I laughed. I said, I was a mandated observer. So if there was any child abuse going on, I'm sure I would know about it. We've only been together for 20 years. And I said, it's not going to happen, but I appreciate your confidence in trying to divide and conquer everybody. She wasn't happy with that answer, and I was expeditiously dismissed and sent away. Within a half hour, we were both being brought up on charges of child abuse. And as Stacy said already, we left with paperwork, and our child was leaving to another hospital, where she was put into basically a facility that was a lockdown facility. I needed a password just to get into it. And if the security guard felt like letting me in the long run, the children wound up home, but it also wound up destroying us financially and destroying them mentally. And when they finally came back, they weren't only disabled, but now they were kind of broke. Because of being indicated, I worked at a hospital. I worked in the NICU, in the pediatrics ward. And slowly I found that I was no longer needed there, which led to my eventual firing after 10 years. And Jensen needs to go, but I think that the doctors need to be retrained, and I think they should take their own psychodolls, at least periodically, and make sure everything's in place. Criminal background checks. How Jensen got there, I don't understand, because most people have to do a criminal background check before they get a job. She already had a hospital change their name because nobody wanted to go there anymore because of her. And then she moved on to another state. And then she came here. You think one of the hospitals would learn by now that this is a problem, just waiting to explode. And now it has. Munchausen by Proxy is 225,000 people. Seems there's an epidemic in Lehigh Valley. It's 1 in 10 million for 2 parents to have it. There's a whole room full of parents that all seem to have Munchausen by proxy at one point or another. That's a problem. That's it. Thank you. Have a great day.
My name is Katrina Manning, and I'm actually a resident of Montgomery County. However, we were accused, and our year of hell began in Lehigh County at Lehigh Valley Hospital, which I took my child to as a former employee of the network. I am a mom of a child with osteogenesis imperfecta, also known as brittle bone disorder. This disorder affects the collagen production in the body, which basically hinders the body's ability to create bone. And it was a long and traumatic road to this diagnosis. In November of 2021, we were victims of LVHN and Debra Jensen. I brought my child to the ER for complaints of pain and difficulty sitting up after he had fallen backwards off the couch while playing with his siblings. He was found to have multiple fractures on the X-ray in various stages of healing, in addition to a recent compression fracture causing his presenting symptoms. The compression fracture would have required the force of a 15-foot fall in a healthy child. While we were unaware of the previous fractures because he never complained of pain until that morning, and he also never had a single bruise. He had also been in our pediatrician's office the Friday before entering the ER. When I met with Jensen, she told me that James, my now ex-husband, courtesy of CYS, was responsible for these injuries because he was home with him while I was at work. Throughout my interactions with Jensen, she had made statements that there was, quote, nothing genetically wrong, end quote, with my child, and that, quote, the only reason that your kids are even home with you right now is because I respect you as a nurse and I went to bat for you, end quote. And, quote, it would be in your best interest to divorce this man and never look back, end quote. As an RN, part of my job is to advocate for my patients to ensure that they receive the proper care, which I extended to my child. This often includes going head-to-head with doctors, so I decided to have my son genetically tested for osteogenesis of CHOP. It took us from November of 2021 to April of 2022 to get the results of his genetic testing, stating that he had an abnormality of the COL1A1 gene, which indicates a diagnosis of osteogenesis imperfecta type 1. While waiting for follow-up appointments and test results, James was investigated by the Pennsylvania State Police, and he has never had any interaction with Jensen or our CYS caseworker in Montgomery County. CYS badgered me to file for divorce and custody of my child in order to keep custody of my children, and consistently reminded me that I had a professional license to protect. James was incarcerated from March 16th of 2022 until April 28th of 2022 on a laundry list of felony charges. He was promptly released from jail on April 28th, the very same day that we received the genetics results. His charges were not officially withdrawn until May 23rd of 2022. Our lives were turned upside down by a medical condition that Jensen told me was impossible for him to have. The CYS caseworker had even said to me she has, quote, never heard of that disorder, therefore it does not exist. And in August, we received genetics results for myself and James. James was found to have the same genetic variant which he passed on to our son. No stone should be left unturned when investigating cases like ours. The system is playing with people's lives. CYS must be better educated on disorders such as osteogenesis imperfecta and other genetic medical conditions. LVHN needs to conduct an internal investigation into the practices of Jensen at the Child Advocacy Center. This misdiagnosis cannot be allowed, and families do not deserve to be torn apart over a genetically inherited disorder. I'm very worried about families who may not have had the medical knowledge and training that I have, and therefore are disadvantaged throughout this process. Our situation could have been avoided with a blood test or even a simple cheek swab. Our family is broken and we struggle to pick up the pieces after a medical misdiagnosis that cost us everything. And I would also like caseworkers to be obligated to listen to parents and not bow to everything that Jensen says, and to be comfortable standing up to them when she is wrong. She is not God, and she should not be able to conduct herself as such.
We saved our son's life and were treated like criminals all in less than 24 hours because of Debra Jensen. There were 5 people in my house the night my son almost lost his life due to a choking incident. My 2-month-old son was happily drinking milk from his bottle when he quickly started choking, turned blue, and went limp. My boyfriend transported our son to the changing table as I grabbed an anti-choking device and my boyfriend began assembling it. I never ran so fast up the stairs, screaming at the top of my lungs for help. My father rushed downstairs and immediately started doing chest compressions as I dialed 911. 2 pumps of the device and my son was conscious, gasping for air and coughing up milk. We saved his life that night. But upon arriving at Lehigh Valley Hospital, the moment we stepped in and Jensen became involved, the diagnosis quickly became something so different, something nobody could have ever prepared me for. All the doctors went silent and no one would speak to us. My boyfriend and I were then told we had to leave the hospital immediately and were to have no contact with our son. The following days, my father and mother-in-law told us about Jensen. They told us that she never introduced herself, but rather made her way in examining my son. Jensen then told them that our son was a victim of shaken baby syndrome. My father and mother-in-law explained the incident multiple times and that this needed to be looked into deeper. Rather, we were told a child can't choke on milk and no amount of pressure from this device could explain his injuries. And even after discovering a misdiagnosis, she refused to reevaluate. When we got a second opinion outside of Lehigh Valley Network that went against her diagnosis, Jensen commented that we must have given the specialist another child's imaging. She stated to my father and mother-in-law that we are young first-time parents who got frustrated with our baby and violently shook him to make him stop crying, and a confession would only make things easier for us. We never saw Jensen, we never spoke to her, we never even met her, yet she somehow claimed to know exactly who we were. Jensen would tell you that I am an active part in an abuse case where to help this 2-month-old little boy, that I am an accomplice to an abuser because I believe his innocence. But today I want to leave you with who I really am. I'm a 21-year-old mother who lost 7 months with her firstborn son. I'm a nursing mother who lost her milk because she wasn't allowed to feed her baby. I'm a first-time mom who watched her first child, meet milestones over FaceTime. I'm a postpartum mom dealing with the grief and the trauma of my son being ripped from my arms. I'm a concerned mother in a hospital looking for help, but instead we were treated like criminals. And I'm a mom who lost everything in less than 24 hours due to one doctor's misdiagnosis. Dr. Jensen needs to be fully and entirely under investigation. Her diagnoses should not hold up in court any longer. She has falsified parents too many times. Enough is enough.
My name is Anne Marie Ioria, and I'm from Northampton County, and that was my daughter. When my grandson was 2 months old, he was nursing from a bottle and he choked and went unresponsive. He was in our home where we resided with his mom and dad, who are my daughter and future son-in-law. Within seconds, he went limp and started turning blue. He wasn't breathing. My daughter and future son-in-law tried to resuscitate him with no success. Then my daughter ran upstairs screaming for help, but the baby wasn't breathing. My husband was right in the kitchen and ran down with her and said, "Call 911," as he started to assist with CPR. Still, there was no success. An anti-choking device that my daughter had just purchased was then used, which was brand new and never used before. Thank God it was successful and my grandson started to breathe and cry. My daughter was still on the phone with 911, so she gave the phone to my husband and ran to embrace her child and boyfriend. They had just saved their baby's life. This was so traumatic, but compared to what we went through once Jensen came on the scene is unbelievable. I cannot even refer to her as a doctor, because the doctor takes a Hippocratic oath, and what she does is nowhere near keeping children safe. She did not listen to my husband or the paternal grandmother when they explained what happened, as she had already come to her conclusion all by herself. There were head injuries and bruising from the mask that was on the device, so she declared child abuse and said that someone was abusing this child. My future son-in-law and daughter were her main targets. She described them as young parents who got frustrated, shook their baby, and probably slammed his head against the table, all while demonstrating her deranged emotions of this to my husband and paternal grandmother. To her, there could be no other cause for the injuries, even as the grandparents were trying to explain what really happened. I ask you, what kind of doctor does this? There were witnesses, other than for 3 minutes, but that didn't matter because she already had her mind made up. We were not listened to by any of the doctors or CYS after just a few minutes of being at the hospital, and it was as if we were invisible, yet we had to leave my grandson and could not be around him because of this doctor's uncontested diagnosis. Second opinions didn't matter as she shook them off. There is absolutely nothing in place for innocent families. They're treated as criminals, their voices aren't heard, and they are dragged through the mud while having their children ripped from them. A person like this, in a position as this, Dr. Jensen, there has to be oversight and evaluations done regularly. I would recommend, after Debra Esernio-Jensen's investigation and termination, that any doctor in this position be required to take a psychological evaluation yearly. This doctor has left a trail of destruction to families in her path here in the Lehigh Valley. Please hear our voices and act appropriately on this matter to keep the children and families in our community safe. Thank you.
That was my daughter, and that was my wife and my grandfather. My name is Marcus. I had the pleasure of meeting with Jensen. During my initial meeting with Dr. Jensen, she explained that in her expert opinion, she believed the cause of my grandson's injuries were a result of shaken baby syndrome. When I questioned her diagnosis, I was told flatly, and I quote, "Because I'm an expert and you're not." I found this retort rather concerning. I just wanted to ask questions regarding the injuries she mentioned, and if those injuries could be caused from something else, not just shaken baby. She shot down any suggestions I had and insisted the baby was shaken. She also seemed eager to demonstrate the aggressive actions of shaking the baby. We brought the baby to the yard because he choked and stopped breathing while drinking from the bottle, as you've heard. We were hoping to get some answers regarding why that happened. We never got those answers until 7 weeks later, when they finally got the answer from a suck and swallow team that confirmed that the baby did have a suck and swallow issue. But once that diagnosis, child abuse, most of the doctors treated us as outcasts. We were avoided and even given incorrect information regarding specific questions about choking on milk from the bottle. One doctor stated, "There's no way a baby would choke on milk and go unresponsive." All this odd behavior from Jensen, her board of doctors, and CPS, we started doing some Google searches. Once we saw what was coming up in the search results, it motivated us to get legal help. We saw an abundance of bad reviews along with a list of many legal cases against her in New York, Florida, and Pennsylvania. I realize everything you read on the internet isn't always true. So we reached out to a few attorneys in the Lehigh Valley for consult and advice. We were informed there's a judge in Northampton County that finds her information to be unreliable. She was unable to testify in certain courts in New York because her information was deemed unreliable. She's threatened doctors who give a differing opinion than hers. I'm concerned this doctor is in an uncontested position of power, pushing her claims as an expert to the LVHN network of doctors who might have a different opinion, and also threatening those doctors who disagree with her diagnosis. There seems to be no checks and balances for someone in this position. As we are seeing now, and as I've been hearing throughout the night, it's becoming dangerous for Lehigh Valley families. And a lot of times during this experience, I've always been asking questions. Are there checks and balances to keep someone like this from going rogue? If not, why? Is it legal to call their doctors and threaten them because they disagree with you? How does she still have a license to practice medicine with these types of behaviors? How is she still board certified with this type of behavior? And how does she continually get hired by hospitals with this background and type of behaviors? Thank
you. That was my family. My name is Avril Ashiola from Northampton County. The first moments I met Dr. Debra E. Jensen, she was dismissive, she was rude, she was arrogant and abusive, and that was before I learned of the evil that this woman is truly capable of. Would any of you bring your child to a doctor with a 1-star rating? Okay, on some sites it says 2. Yet, she is placed in a position of power over our most vulnerable. I learned of her cunning schemes. Her only priority was her own defense. She had people repeat her lies over and over and over and over again, so she didn't have to. The truth needs no defense. Truth doesn't use fear or intimidation. She made sure her lies got there first. They all admitted that once her diagnosis was written into the system, it would take a whole legal team to make it go away. This is happening every day to innocent people, and the public has no idea. A lie can travel the world several times, while the truth still is putting on its shoes. I never seen adults defend themselves with such vigor when we were talking about a defenseless child. They were more concerned with protecting their profits and capitalizing on the position than they were for protecting a helpless child. Every step of the way, neglecting to tell us our rights, lying about our rights with nothing to lose on their end except their convenience. But they stole his first year away from his parents. Those rights would have only benefited my grandson. Rights that they have taken this thing out of excruciating trauma. This was excruciating trauma for the last year of our lives. They held that control over a hurting family. We found another doctor who happened to have a 5-star rating, globally respected, and respected for his research on bone disease. He was a bone specialist. His findings dismantled everything that Debra Jensen was claiming. Another doctor offered a second opinion. We have proof that she called up that doctor and threatened him into agreeing with her findings. This is abuse. What she is doing is abuse. Not just of our children, but at this community at large. How dangerous that we lose faith in our doctors. We are traumatized. We are afraid of doctors now. I'm afraid of doctors now because we have seen firsthand what Jensen is capable of. We will never look at the word doctor the same way again. Thank you.
My name is Lori Moretta, and I'm a resident of Lehigh County. And I'm going to speak about experiences not one but two families have gone through that I know. I'm not really sure how to begin in describing these experiences, but I've watched two separate families ripped apart by statements and accusations that I know to be false. In the first situation, the family of my dearest friends was destroyed by the false accusations of child abuse of 3 children by their parents. Despite having multiple ready and willing family members, including myself, pleading to care for the children, they were placed in a neglectful to foster care with strangers. We did everything that was asked of us to become eligible to foster the children during an FBI background check, preparing our home and rooms for them, mandatory reporter training, and multiple inspections of our house for suitability. We were approved in the first few months for foster care and were hopeful that the children would be able to come home to live with us. Despite this, the children remained in foster care for 5 years with a family that repeatedly stated that they were only fostering the children for the money so that they could afford to have another child of their own. False claims made by Dr. Jensen indicated that one of the children had been strangled and burned with cigarettes, despite no medical or photographic evidence to support this claim. The accusations of abuse were made during the integration period where the children were returned to foster care on Sundays and were made by the foster family. The child in question was taken to an urgent care where no injury was recorded, and then the foster parents drove over an hour to specifically have the child examined by Dr. Jensen in Lehigh County without medical evidence or pictures that showed claims of the abuse. The day that these injuries allegedly occurred, there were several witnesses, 4 of which were mandatory reporters, willing to testify in court that there were no injuries to the children and that they were in the child's company the whole day. There was, however, one injury found that was evidenced by x-rays, indicating that the child had suffered a broken leg which based on the healing progress occurred while he was in the sole care of the foster family. He was not taken to the hospital for this injury, and Dr. Jensen did not make any further investigation of that injury or any accusation of abuse, despite clear evidence of when this injury occurred, and that it was untreated and unreported by the foster family while solely in their custody. We watched helplessly as this nightmare unfolded and became worse and worse as the false statements, complete absence of medical and photographic proof was used to keep these children in foster care and away from family members that love them and are willing to care for them. When the children were finally able to come home to their father's care, they hoarded food and were afraid to play with toys that were given to them. They were quiet and shy during the integration process, but one thing was constant. They did not want to go return to that foster home, and they wanted to remain with their dad who loves them. At their 5th birthday party, the first ones that we were able to have for them, the children were completely shocked that the balloon cake and presents were just for them. I'm heartbroken that the children had to endure this early trauma and feeling of neglect from the family that loved them. Their early memories do not include the love their family and the big family birthdays and holidays that they should have been part of. I do not know how to make it up to them or to assure them that no one will take them away again. Yes, they are still afraid of being taken away. During this time, a second very close friend, whom we have known for over a decade, had her 12-year-old and 17-year-old daughters who have had lifelong medical issues taken from her and placed in foster care. I have known the 12-year-old since the day she was born, and I have known the 17-year-old since she was around 5 years old, and know that they have had health issues their whole lives for which they are in treatment at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and their specialists. When these girls were taken from their family, their mother was accused of Munchausen by Proxy, and the girls were told that they were not sick and that their mother was making them think they were sick. I know this family and these girls and have watched them struggle with their health issues while doing everything they could to have a normal life. I have seen firsthand on numerous occasions how the girls were not able to keep up with other kids because of pain and fatigue, and have seen the toll it has taken on them. Their mother works tirelessly and selflessly to find them the best specialists and medical care so that they can have a normal life. Their father is a devoted vet to his family and does all he can to make sure they are cared for. To know that these children were denied their much-needed medical care, which was prescribed by top specialists at CHOP, and that their mother was being blamed was unbelievable, and to know that the same doctor who falsely claimed child abuse by another friend seemed impossible. But it was very real, and the nightmare was happening again. The 12-year-old was placed in hospital for evaluation and denied visitation from family for several days. During that time, we offered our contact information to their mom to get the child sessions and offered to visit her in the hospital to make sure she was being cared for and had the necessities that she may need. No one from Child Services contacted us, no one was allowed to see her or comfort her while she was there, and she had limited access to a phone or tablet to contact anyone she knew. The girls were in foster care for several months and were denied their appropriate medical care. During that time was a wait-and-see approach to determine their health condition.
I'll give you 30 more seconds.
Okay. I know that this experience broke something in their family, and they are in constant state of terror that their children will again be taken away. And I'm going to summarize. Get rid of Dr. Jensen and fix the system because it's broken.
Hello, my name is Wynn Edelman, and I live in Delaware County. Unlike most of these people, I am not a family member of a child who was taken away. I am a friend. I feel very deeply about this situation because I grew up in Whitehall and have had many relatives in the LVHN hospital system. It's very personal to me because if I still lived here, I'm certain that my daughter would have been one of those who were removed. Our story is very similar to many of the millions of folks who have POTS. And some of these children who have been taken away have the condition of POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, a type of dysautonomia. It's a very complex condition, but it's very real and has its own medical ICD-10 code, G90. My daughter happens to be on the complex side. She's seen 19 different types of medical specialties and 45 different practitioners. She's on 16 medications and supplements, down from 24. She's the most functional that she's been since she started the condition over 10 years ago. Folks with this condition typically see more than 10 different types of doctors and spend tens of thousands of dollars for medical treatments every year. Of course, Dr. Jensen doesn't believe that POTS is real. My daughter and I attended the Dysautonomia International Conference recently and heard from the world's experts about the complexity of this syndrome, the huge increase in numbers of those diagnosed, and the need for research. We also lobbied our senators and representatives on Capitol Hill to fund research into this disease that's devastating so many. In fact, 60 to 80% of those people who have long COVID will be diagnosed with POTS. So many people that you know, even though it's a condition you and many doctors have never heard of, it is a very, very common disease. My family has considered moving back to Allentown since we've now retired and are looking for a single-level house. But the actions of LVHN prove that complex patients are not treated properly, and that medical care is a significant factor in our decision. I know of patients who have moved to be close to physicians who are beneficial to their treatment, for us and for anybody who has POTS. Allentown is out of consideration. LVHN should never be trusted by anybody who has POTS. When I heard that a friend's child who was in a similar medical situation to ours had been taken away, I was aghast. This mother was reaching out for medical treatment just as I was. What good mother wouldn't try to do everything she could for a child who was in constant pain? It's clear that any doctor who thought that that mother was doing something wrong is unknowledgeable about the disease and should not be making judgments about that disease. I've warned many people to be careful if they are considering taking their child to LVHN. Some of them are now being treated in Philadelphia or New Jersey or Hershey, and some in Virginia, rather than risking child removal by LVHN. I know of at least 13 families in the area who have gone elsewhere for treatment. There are thousands of families outside of the Lehigh Valley area who are aware of this situation going on at LVHN. This is not just a reputational thing in the Lehigh Valley. The world is aware of what is going on here. The damage that is being done to these children and these families is devastating. It scars them for life. Because a doctor is not knowledgeable about a disease, but decides and somehow has the power to make these decisions without understanding the breadth of the situation and accuses parents of faking it or of having Munchausen's. This greatly damages the reputation of the hospital system and Lehigh County. I just would like to let you know that I can get a nonprofit that I know of who works with the top doctors in POTS and dysautonomia experts from Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic, and Harvard, who they can provide expert speakers on how to recognize, diagnose, and treat POTS. And they are willing to come to the Lehigh Valley and educate doctors, the council, other people that you would be interested. If you can arrange for an event, they will come. It will be free. You can't turn that down. Please make that happen. Thank you.
Sorry about that, I can't see the light. I have to applaud every single parent that have come over tonight and have said what they have said here. My situation is that my wife and I have 7 children. Out of the 7, 5 of them have autism. Between PDD, Asperger, and ADHD, and 3 of them were level 3 in the spectrum, which is the highest. One of the children in 2016 tried to hurt herself, and we did a family meeting, and we had every children and also help in looking after her so she won't hurt herself or anything. And we go through the process of having the proper family therapy and things to help a child with autism. But one of the children with autism felt left out and was angry and made some allegations towards another family member. And I wind up having a visit from CYS. They come over to the house, they interview all the children, they interview my wife as well, and me, and I. And two of the family members were asked to leave the home, and then it was determined that the child would be safe with the father, which is me. The caseworker determined that the child would be safe, so they took the child, I'm sorry, and I was told that I would get a call during the weekend and to see what else follows after this while the investigation is being conducted. I was asked to bring the child to the CAC at Lehigh Valley Hospital. I walked in with the child, and it was 6.5 hours that I was left in the waiting room without seeing any doctors, any psychologists, any therapists to come question me for anything. The only thing that came out was the caseworker, a supervisor caseworker, and said that the child was not going home. The child is not safe with you. I asked them, is it because I'm blind? He repeats, no, it is because the child is not safe with you. You told the child not to do the interview. If I would not want the child to do the interview, why should I bring her in the first place? From there, I was informed that she was going to be taken to family friends. These are not family friends, these are people who we know. And I find this person to be a person of interest ever since all of this started. I tried to explain also the situation with the autism and how severe it is. Even though the child is high functioning, but that's due to imitating us, not for the child to be seen as someone who cannot be productive, because even autism, children with autism at their highest level can still be productive. All we have to do is dedicate our time, and that's what we did. We had over 6 years of 30 hours of therapists and early childhood, Lehigh County early childhood intervention coming to the home. The allegations meet the timeline of these therapy, and none of these professionals ever saw any wrongdoing, and I gotta give them a hand on that, on the Lehigh County early childhood intervention, because they did a really good job helping us, orienting us. CYS is a nightmare. They do the complete opposite. They have records. They don't look at the records. The hospital, Lehigh Valley, all my 7 children were born in that hospital. My name is Luis Rodriguez, I'm sorry, and I am from Lehigh County. I don't know how to express myself and the pain that my family has gone through. I mean, the phone rings, and everybody jumps. The doorbell. They never went to the CAC interview. There was also additional allegations of 2 of the other children that were going through the same abuse, but it came back unfounded. The thing that happened to us, and with the child with over at the Child Advocacy Center at Lehigh County Hospital, nobody wanted to hear anything. And as I said previously, no one came over. I have documentation of every single papers of also other type of illegal, not illegal, but against constitutional parental rights.
Sir, I'm gonna give you another 30 seconds to wrap up.
I only wanted to say that I really like the recommendations from the Controller's Office, and I really do hope it is taken well into consideration and put into practice, because there are excellent ideas. My child was never in any imminent danger or risk, and she should have never been taken away. And to this day, I still don't have my daughter. Thank you.
My name is Melissa Malkovitz, and I live in Northampton County. I'm going to read you a letter that I wrote to my son a couple weeks ago. Every minute of the day I think of you. I wonder if you're okay. Are you hungry? Is there something that you need? I wonder if you miss me the way that I miss you. I waited for you my whole life to have you taken just like that. I say that I am okay, for I am always strong. That's the only way I know how to be. I am like an empty vessel that's broken, trying not to sink. I have come to learn that evil really does exist. I have come to learn that even if you have done no wrong, they really don't care. They will take every right you have away and silence you. I have come to learn just what I am made of, inside my head with no way out. You are my shining light through this storm. I will never be the same as I was. My trust is limited, if not gone. And my respect for authority, well, let's just say when they do the right thing, maybe I'll care. You are my strength because I have become weak, tired, and helpless. As the days go by, every time I see you, I cry inside silent, so nobody knows how my heart hurts without you. I want you to know that my love for you will never die. I will always be by your side, and I will never walk away. Because of Debra Jensen, I have lost my son. I get to see him limited time whenever his father says I can come. I don't want this lady to do this to anybody else, and it's you, Lehigh County Board, that has to start changing the way things work.
My name is Steve Malkovitz, and that was my daughter. 697 days thus far of the pain, anger, hopelessness, despair, having your heart ripped out for watching and listening to my daughter cry in anger. These rolling roller coaster emotions have gone on since 697 days, since September 21st, 2021, when Debra Jensen accused my daughter of child abuse. Melissa's son was taken from her arms at Lehigh Valley Hospital that night. 3 days later, Nikki Sanchez, a caseworker for Lehigh Valley Child and Youth, met with Melissa, not to interview her, not to inspect the home she was living in or where she resided at the time, but to hand her a safety plan. Upon leaving, Mrs. Sanchez called her a predator several times and said the state police are coming for you. On November 30th of 2021, Ms. Sanchez filed an indicated report with the state. This action caused my daughter to lose her job, have her state beautician's license revoked. Ms. Sanchez reported to the state Melissa is an unfit mother, mentally disturbed, and an unfit caregiver. Ms. Sanchez made the assessment of my daughter without even an interview. 7 months later, April 29th, Melissa met with the state police that were supposed to come 7 months earlier. Sean McCormick of True Family. We thought we could get her story out then, but she was only berated, badgered, and showed a photo of Brody, who's looking like a beaten child. This photo was photoshopped. 5 months after the police interviewed, Lehigh Valley drops the case against Melissa. We think we're making headway, but no. December 19th of 2022, we have an appeals hearing to have the indicated report expunged. Case heard by Judge Andrew Maloney. Debra Jensen, in her usual fashion, lies. Ms. Sanchez, who was at the hearing, admitted not following procedures and made excuses that she has only been on the job for a year to a year and a half. It's now 216 days since the hearing with Judge Maloney, and we didn't hear anything. There's no decision. My daughter's been hurting for the last 697 days. She missed 2 Christmases, 2 birthdays, along with the other special, precious moments that you have in a young child's life. Trying to console my daughter over the past 13 months, it is impossible. The amount of sleepless nights, crying, praying, looking for hope of some kind, some answers. Debra Jensen, under the umbrella of the Lehigh Valley Hospital, enforced by the Lehigh Valley Child and Youth, state police who did not investigate for the truth, but went under the assumption of guilt. The lack of timely decision by a judge, all this going on right under RDA James B. Martin. Something needs to be done.
Good evening. My name is Tom Bedecchio. From Jersey. I'm here supporting one of the abused families. I'm going to repeat a stat that I heard from Mr. Controller over there. 33% of all child abuse cases happens in this hospital system. That should be a complete red flag for you guys. 33% of all child abuse cases in the state of Pennsylvania happen here. Why do you think that is? I'll give you my opinion. This hospital system has a system in place to generate revenue through complete overpower and abuse by their hospital staff, just to make a buck. It doesn't care about these families and what they're going through. These are hard-working Pennsylvania families. They're just trying to raise kids, and they're making money off of these people. I believe it's this committee's or council, whatever the hell you guys are, duty to investigate this and support these families. I don't think you should be able to go home and face your family without taking their clothes up and taking it there.
About Allentown. A little over 7 months ago, my wife and me, Alpha, got a phone call in the middle of the night saying that you need to come to the hospital. Elijah, our grandson, almost died. And the other grandparents and their parents and then his parents were being forced out of the hospital for alleged child abuse. We didn't do anything, we just reacted. We came right over there and we walked into the room, and this little 2-month-old is almost not strapped to him, but he's so small that it looked like he was just being held prisoner there. There were some injuries, there was some things that happened with choking with milk. We heard about that, we knew about that. But soon after, we just found ourselves to see that everything that we tried to do to follow the rules that they asked us to do from CYS was completely ignored. when we're shown the truth, which we live by, a Christian, a born-again Christian, we walk with Christ. That's all how we see and live by. We were constantly told we were wrong, and that what we're doing was wrong. My son, right now, just moved back after 2 months living in a hotel because he was forced away from where he was, couldn't come to my house because Eli, our grandson, was living there, which they perceived him as a threat. After his lawyer cleared him to go back with his fiancée, my son still vowed to stay at the hotel just so Reno can get visitation. He did not want to take that away from the mother who's been stripped for 7 months of time with her son. And this Dr. Jensen, how she got into power, how she's able to come here from being in Florida and New York is beyond me, but this needs to be changed. I'm a truck driver. I drive through the Lehigh Valley every day, and I see billboard signs everywhere about how good the hospital is. I would rather die in an ambulance rather than be taken there.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody should the side of our life has to be a threat. We pay enough money for medical coverage and insurance. Now we have to have a hospital dictate whether we live or die, whether our children can come home or not. People are afraid as it is to go into a hospital because they're afraid to get sick with COVID. Now our children can't even be taken care of because of Debra Jensen and her agenda. This needs to change, and I think you guys can do that. Thank you.
My name is Emily Lehman. I'm a resident of Lehigh County. I'm also a licensed clinical social worker. I've worked in children's mental health in Lehigh Valley for my entire career, over 20 years, in various roles and positions. I have also witnessed personally a family who has endured extensive trauma and destruction of their family over the past year after encountering Dr. Jensen at Lehigh Valley Hospital. Prior to this, I knew this family since the birth of their children. I saw them as parents, as their children grew up. I saw them love and care for their children endlessly. I saw them receive treatment from medical experts to ensure that their children could fulfill their best possible lives. I have never in all my years working in this field ever imagined that something like this could or would happen at the hands of both medical professionals as well as Lehigh County CYS. I am a mandated reporter. I have been trained year after year about the requirements of mandated reporting. I have made reports over the years, and I have worked in collaboration with CYS workers. Still, I could never, ever in a million years imagine what I witnessed occur. The disregard for parents' rights and basic civil rights was absolutely astonishing. I was stunned at every turn and kept repeating to myself, this can't possibly be true, this can't really be happening. Someone will see this as wrong and someone will stop it. But it didn't happen. Parents following the medical direction of a team of doctors were now being told that they were being harmful to their children and being labeled as abusers. An allegation so severe that the children were removed immediately from their care, kidnapped at the hospital, and parents immediately denied access in any form. How was this happening when it appeared to not be following any of the typical protocol I had seen in the field year after year? It was inhumane, it was horrible, and it wreaked havoc and permanent damage to a family in an instant, and then was dragged on for a year. Court dates drawn out months apart, debt piling up for legal fees. I kept wondering how many families could even manage half or a small amount of this. Families have little to nothing in their corner while the systems are pummeling them with endless resources. It's cruel and it's unbearable. The system and supports that I thought were present in the system were not there. The apparent lies I felt I now have told families over the years about how CYS rarely takes kids, that they will support you, it will be okay, and they care about the kids were ringing in my head in mass confusion of what I was seeing. The amount of control that Lehigh Valley Hospital and Dr. Jensen seemed to have over a CYS investigation or lack of investigation was again astonishing, none of it making sense. Imagine this happening to your family, a friend, people you know, because it's horrifying and unreal to experience even from the sidelines.
And yet it was a mistake, and as you can hear from tonight, it didn't happen to one family, not even just a few families. It's happening over and over again right here in our community, and it has to be fixed. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cookie Aaron, and I'm here on behalf of Melissa Milkovitz. Melissa lives with my husband and I, and her son was living with us too at the time. And it just one day we were called, and she was telling us that her son was ripped out of her arms at Lehigh Valley Hospital by Dr. Jensen and given to his father because she abused him. First of all, Melissa was living with us. There was no abuse. That was her world. That child was her life. I watched her take care of him 24/7. I watched her feed him and bathe him and love him. And we did the same. This is something that really needs to be changed in our system. For one, nobody ever came to our house to see where she was living, how she was living, what her positions were. They never interviewed my husband and I, but yet I was accused of also abusing the child by his father. And I can promise you, none of this has ever happened. She loves that boy, it's her world. She waited a long time in her life to have a child. She didn't think she could ever have one. And this was her life. And she just would have never done anything. These pictures that they showed us at the police station were just, there's no way he left our house looking that way that morning. We would have seen it. And we were there when she left the home to go to work and dropped him off at daycare. And within a couple hours, Dr. Jensen, again, has ruined the lives of a family, a beautiful family, and a mother who lost her child because of this, of false accusations. I really do have a lot more to say, but I think I better leave the rest to my husband. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Craig Aaron. That was my wife. Allegedly, my goddaughter, who was Melissa Milkovitz, was accused of being child abuse. She took this child to daycare. This child was examined at daycare. At daycare also called the father that day, 3 hours later, and had the child taken to the hospital to be checked out for child abuse. That was at one point that the determination was that there was alleged child abuse. 2 weeks later, they had another examination because I don't think they got the determination that they asked for. So Debra Jensen had involvement in the second one for sure. The first one, I'm not sure. State police interviewed my wife and I as to the living of how things were in our house. They never came to inspect our house. They never asked those questions. They showed us pictures of this child, and they said that he was abused. They pointed out to us the marks that he's had. In my eyes, these pictures were photoshopped, like her grandfather said. And I can attest to the fact that my goddaughter comes home and this rips her apart. Like my wife said, they ripped apart a perfectly good family. She's a very loving mother. She took care of this child. She progressed with this child. It's her first child. And the way it looks, is probably going to be her last. So after all this has gone on, I'd like to see this council, this county, this state, get rid of this Debra Jensen. She is by far one of the most terrible people that I've ever encountered.
Hi, my name is Gage Accardi, and I'm from Carbon County. I'm speaking on behalf of my wife and myself. Our story is recent, last month in fact. How many of you can say that you'd be accused of child abuse when you had children? I can say for a fact neither of us did. There is not a thing we wouldn't do for them. Living near a children's hospital used to be something I loved, because I thought there would be great people caring for our daughter if the time ever arose, and it did multiple times. Our daughter was born almost a month early and had numerous doctor's visits, a NICU stay, and hospital admissions. Now we can't step foot in a Lehigh Valley Network building without wanting to cry. The countless amount of dirty looks, side comments about how we are the parents who beat our baby and tried to leave her. We get treated so differently, and we're so nervous to go to the doctor's office anymore. Instead of looking into the issues our daughter was having that led us to the hospital in the first place, they saw a small bruise and immediately wanted to paint a picture. They did multiple x-rays and went from widening to a fractured rib. My wife got questioned by Dr. Jensen like she was being questioned by the police. My wife had tried to tell her that my son was physically and mean lately to the baby. She aggressively told my wife our 4.5-year-old son could have never hurt a baby like this, and it must have been an adult. She accused me of abusing our daughter without even talking to me. She forcibly told my wife that she was a victim of domestic violence. Told her I was controlling because we purchased a new car together. She tried to target the fact that I'm autistic, and that makes me less of a person. She demanded our daughter undergo a sedated MRI under the assumption she had a brain bleed when the radiologist stated it was artifact. Mind you, our daughter went into the children's hospital because she had a breathing episode where she stopped breathing. And then the second we refused further treatment and transfer her elsewhere, they told the judge we were unfit and a danger to our daughter. Our daughter is exclusively breastfed baby. As most people know, breastfed babies can have a vitamin D deficiency, which Aspen, our daughter, did have. This can lead to fragile bones. We are extremely grateful that our caseworker in Carbon County did her research. She did an investigation and didn't just take one side. Our daughter was ripped from a loving family. We were escorted out by both the Lehigh Valley security guards and Salisbury Township police officers. I can't imagine what other families have gone through. And our hearts truly goes to them as we all struggle through this horrible time. We're praying this is where her malicious ways come to an end. All of our lives are forever changed because of this doctor. Something needs to be done. Please do something, help our community, and help our children.
Hello, my name is Beth Allison Maloney. I'm an attorney. I'm sure Mr. Dutt recognizes my name because he's been copied on letters I've sent, and if Mr. Armstrong is watching the county executive, I say hello to you too. I am an attorney and author and a national expert on medical kidnapping cases. What does that mean? That means when unqualified doctors, such as pediatricians, decide that long-term treating experts have it wrong and accuse the parents of the children of having psychological disorders. My clients are Kim and Steve Speltz, who spoke first. Kim founded the Parents Medical Rights Group of Lehigh Valley. Their case was over on May 22nd, 2023, when CYS withdrew its petition. They are still listed on the registry of child abusers, and they are facing another trial over that. This is not a hospital problem, this is a county problem, because the county taxpayers are paying the solicitors, the caseworkers, the supervisors, the administrators at CYS who choose to ignore the truth, who do not investigate, who simply rubber stamp the allegations that are made from that hospital. There were plenty of resources made available to the caseworkers and supervisors in the case for the Stelzes. They did not read records. They would not make phone calls. They would not talk to individuals who had the information to assure them that there was no abuse. As far as I could tell, there was one method of operation: bullying. The solicitor was a bully. Dr. Jensen was a bully. The caseworkers were bullies. There was no lawyering. There was only accusations and a complete lack of interest in the truth. And what was shocking to me, professionally and personally, is that everybody knows. The lawyers know, the caseworkers know, the supervisors know, and yet they all just go along to get along and apparently go out and have coffee together and discuss how unfair it is, and yet keep taking children. And the county keeps funding that. So I would point out that this is a systemic problem, not a hospital problem. The hospital is part of the problem. Why is the county supporting this problem? I would like to thank the controller for finally giving a voice to these parents who have been falsely accused and struggled for years to bring this to the appropriate attention of lawyers, of judges, of solicitors, of county commissioners, and finally they have a voice. And what I would say is it is not going to end here. The parents will continue to insist that there be movement on this, and I will be helping them as much as I possibly can. Thank you.
Joe Welsh, Lehigh Valley Justice Institute. I had no idea that everyone was going to be here tonight, that this issue was going to come up. Well, let me continue. I understand the commissioners do not, and I hope everyone in the room understands, directly supervise county government, county departments. Commissioners do set policy for the county through the legislative process, and we certainly have given them very much to consider. I'm a parent. I can't imagine what you've gone through. It is the absolute parent's nightmare. I'm also an attorney, and frankly, a number of the acts which have been described certainly implicate criminal laws. In fact, so many that it makes my head spin. So what I think this county, while everyone in county government has their roles to play, I think what this county as a whole needs to do is to look to the district attorney's office. Because based upon the weight of the statements that have been made over the past 2 hours here, the district attorney's office of Lehigh County needs to immediately open an investigation into this matter. I was informed tonight by one of the people who made a statement that the district attorney has told a member of the news media that he has not received any complaints with regard to this doctor. Whether he has or not, and whether or not that was a true statement, what you can do to rectify that situation is tomorrow morning, all contact the district attorney's office and tell them that you want to inform them of what happened to you. Now, I was encouraged to hear my former colleague and friend, Attorney Ward, say that Mr. Hollihan, Attorney Hollihan, is aware of this. But if this is an ongoing situation, it's not something that can wait for the incumbent district attorney's retirement at the end of the year. The investigation must be immediate. It must commence tomorrow, not Friday, not next week, not next month, not next year. And if that office believes that for some reason they are unable or unwilling to engage in such an investigation, it should be immediately referred to the State Attorney General's Office for investigation. Thank you very much.
Anybody else? I'm going to have a couple of really quick comments that I'd like to make. I did not check digital attendance, but I don't have any hands raised. So the Deputy Clerk, can you help me find that hand? Yes. So I'm going to recognize the username. I'm apologizing for mispronunciation. I'm going to ask you to state your name and the municipality in which you reside for the record. Mazakine, please state your name. Again, 5 minutes.
Okay, my name is Amanda. I'm on a friend's account. I reside in Northampton County, and I was asked to withhold some of my information due to pending trial. I am facing 5 felonies, 2 misdemeanors, which could send me to prison for a very long time and result in losing my children forever. It's been 1,347 days. 3 years, 8 months, and 8 days ago is when my children were removed from my care. December 14th, 2018. Around 5:30 in the morning, I woke up to a thud on the floor and awakened to see my 7-week-old baby with his onesie unzipped and 2-year-old in his bassinet. I picked my son up off the floor after getting my 2-year-old out of his bassinet. My worst fear was 2 minutes is what's being held against me. I called my sister, I called my children's father, and then I called the primary care physician. And once the recording came up, stating if it was an emergency to call 911. At that moment is when I called. I looked at my 4 oldest children, and I knew that was going to be the last time they were in my home. My nightmare began. The police arrived, the ambulance arrived. My 7-week-old had been alert the entire time. He fussed a tiny bit, but he was easily consolable. And according to EMS, he was acting age appropriate. I loaded up all my children and drove to the hospital, calling my sister on the way so she could meet me there. As I waited for answers, I went back and forth between my son's room and my other children's room. I fed my 7-week-old. I slept along with him. I held him. Hours went by with no answers as to what was going on. When I asked the nurses at Lehigh County Hospital, there was no updates. They could keep hours for a doctor to come in and tell me what was wrong. First, they told me there was a brain bleed. I immediately broke down, started crying. She looked at me and walked away. I collected myself and I went to find her and asked if she could please explain to my sister what was going on. It went from a brain bleed to fractures. Again, I started crying. I asked several times. I was asked several times what happened. I told them the only thing that I knew, and that was waking up to a thud on the floor and finding my 2-year-old in his basketball. After hours of being in the ER, he was transferred to PICU. While he was in PICU, he had an MRI done, which went into the early morning hours of Sunday on December 15th. My 2-year-old could climb, and that his injuries could have only come from a car accident or me shaking him and slamming him, and that was not the case. My children, 3 of them have been molested in one home. 2 of them have been molested in another home. When I noticed things were going on, I let my caseworkers and the supervisors know. I brought the issue up to the master. I wanted the documentation because I had gotten documentation from the foster care placement that there was irritation to 2 of my daughter's vaginas. And one of them had blood in her urine. And that was at the second home. I asked for them to be seen by the Child Advocacy Center on 17th and Chew at Lehigh Valley Hospital. It took a month. A month, almost. Nothing came out of it. My daughter told the same story 4 times and nobody listened. Nobody. When my 7-week-old was supposed to have another scan done, they excluded his skull, and I begged for another scan. Nothing. I have lost jobs, friends, families, because of the situation. On my court hearing, when they removed my children, they told me my son was near fatality. They did not tell me that in the hospital when they went over everything. They wanted to release my son on December 15th, but couldn't because they had to get an order to remove my children from me completely. My son was out of the hospital on Tuesday, December 17th, and put into daycare on the 18th. A child that is near fatality should have not been released to a daycare or going to daycare. But that is all I have to say. Thank you for listening and have a good day.
So I have a couple of brief statements that I'd like to make, and if any of my colleagues want to follow up, I'm certainly allowed you to do so. I believe that the allegations in the reports that the controller published today should have been sent to the Department of Human Services before the report was even published. I think the allegations are worthy of that kind of consideration. So tomorrow, I will ensure that the report is in the Secretary of the Department.
It's been sent, thank you, Jeff.
Pardon?
It's been sent, thank you, Jeff.
Great, I'll make sure that it's in her hands also. The general statement that I'd like to make is that the County of Lehigh has a legal and moral obligation to investigate every allegation of child abuse brought forward to county personnel and agencies. I don't think anybody in the room disagrees with that. And I think we will continue to make sure that happens. Nonetheless, these concerns must be sent to the Department of Human Services. I think Mr. Welch's comments about law enforcement engagement are interesting and worthy of consideration. Also, as I often say, I don't tell the borough officers how to do their job. I don't tell Mr. Pinsley how to do his job. I don't tell the county executive how to do his job. I sure don't tell the judges or the district attorney how to do their job, though they often yell at me thinking that I do. Nonetheless, I share your agreement, share your sentiments. That wraps up my comments. Anybody else? Commissioner Harrington?
I just want to say that I hear the pain in the voices of folks that are here, and you know, I've been 11-month-old. I think of him. So, yeah, I'm glad that we're sending this along. I hope that what needs to be done gets done, and the bravery to come forward with these things. I know it's going to be hard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Perez, I'm going to recognize you as the final public comment on this matter. You did have opportunity to have your hands raised, so you have 5 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
How you doing? Louis Perez here, Proxy. I am also one of the newly appointed Human Relations Commissioners or Commission Department. We are in the process of finalizing our Human Relations Commissioners Department, but I am also a parent. I'm also someone that has dealt with the system here, and I have worked with the legal system, and I can't even imagine what these parents have gone through. And I, first of all, want to apologize to everybody. I've been out of the scene for a while because of my health, but I couldn't even sit here and just imagine what these families are going through. And the sad reality of this is that we don't know what's true, what's not, what's, you know, who's at fault. And at this point, it's not about that. It's about rectifying what's needed for these families. I would like to offer my assistance, however I may be able to be helpful to any of you guys in the department. You all know I have a pretty good relationship with the Department of Justice as well, so I'm willing to help out in any way that I can. This is really sad. It's something that we have to fix. And I apologize to all the families that are going through this, and I wish you the best for you and your children. I'm sure that with these board of commissioners that's in front of you, this is not going to go unheard. Which is, I completely agree with Jeff Brace. This should have came to the department first, not been published. That's also putting information out there that we didn't need to be out there until the investigation was done. So I apologize to all the families for any wrongdoing that was done on your behalf, and I'm sure they have brought this to the right place right now. I'm willing to help you whichever way, and I appreciate you guys coming forth, even though I know it was very hard. But my best wishes and my prayers are with you all, and I promise you that as far as I know, I will try to do everything I can to help out in this situation, help the families as well.
Thank you, Mr. Perez. I just want to clarify, didn't say that the report shouldn't have been published, so the information should have been passed along to the Department of Human Services. But the controller off mic did indicate that it's been sent. So that's, you know, we're going to make sure that it gets attention there. Commissioner Smalls, you have your hand raised.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say thank you to all the families that came forward this evening to share the extreme trauma and traumatic experiences that they have encountered as a mom, and just apart from being a commissioner, just someone listening to your stories and to your heartache and to your tears even. I can't imagine reliving this trauma as you did with us this evening, but I wanted to say thank you for sharing that with us, and my heart is absolutely broken listening to your stories, and I do hope that there is some solace to what you shared with us that has been going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Smalls. Going to it's gonna wrap up our citizens input for the moment. We've got a full room, we've got a full agenda of other items. And I recognize that many of you aren't interested in bond financing and other types of activity. So I'm gonna pause ourselves for 5 minutes, give everybody a chance to leave if they wish to do so. Give us a chance to refresh our water bottles or anything else that we need to do. And then we'll come back into session. So I'm gonna say 7 minutes. At 10 o'clock, we'll come back into order. Thank you, everybody.
She did.
Yeah.